Mm, mm, mm. Watch later. Mm, mm, I'm an agency and I'm trying to be responsible. How is this going to work as a practical matter? Is the agency going to go to court every time it gets one of these undefined terms in a statute and seek, a declaratory judgment as to the meaning of adequate and controlled and well-controlled investigations before it goes forward with its policy?
No.
All right, so the agency can come up with its own definition and implement it and then wait to be sued with respect to that. And every term undefined in a statute, we're going to have litigation about.
No, Your Honor. I think what the agency has to do is what everyone else has to do, which is try to figure out what the law means and then act accordingly. And if someone challenges that, then that'll get sorted out. If there's a legal question, a statutory interpretation question, then that'll get sorted out by the courts. But the agency isn't like paralyzed.
What do we do about the chaos that we talked about in the city of Arlington case that comes from perhaps having different courts, right? We have 11 different, jurisdictions that have legal authority. So something like the definition of adequate and well-controlled investigations, you say the courts will sort it out. Well, first of all, it will take years, perhaps, for the courts to sort it out. What is the agency supposed to be doing in the meantime? And different courts from all of these different jurisdictions could actually have a different view, as Justice Sotomayor pointed out, of what adequate and well-controlled investigations are supposed to do. So a means. So isn't it sort of impractical and chaotic to have a world in which every undefined term in a statute is subject to litigation if you're trying to govern?
Well, I don't think it's impractical. I think that to the extent that Justice Kagan's questions sort of indicate that there's actually a relatively small set of cases in which Chevron's going to make a difference, you're going to have that same problem with respect to the cases that maybe 20 years ago under a looser approach to Chevron wouldn't have gotten deference.
Wouldn't you have more of a problem in a world in which we've gotten rid of Chevron because it's going to give incentives to parties to raise legal issues that they wouldn't have raised before? If I'm an agency and I'm trying to be...
That is, of course, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson and the Chevron versus the Natural Resources Defense Council. It's argument that's going on and could have some serious repercussions as far as the federal government is concerned, where agencies frequently use highly trained experts to interpret and implement federal laws. This is another one of those cases in which the MAGA crew brought and trying to just make sure that they eviscerate whatever is left of democracy. Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known, and so much more is going on along those lines as we talk about every day. In Florida, for instance, uh, the voting has taken place with the school board to eliminate any form of DEI in schools. We're going to talk about that this morning. And a GOP lawmaker from Kentucky, he's says he's dropping first cousins from the list of those who could be prosecuted for incest related crimes. They are on just an all out assault here. A judge has ordered Daniel Penny. You remember that former Marine who just decided to take a life on a New York City subway train last year? Well, he's ordered Daniel Penny to stand trial in the death of Jordan Neely. If you recall, Jordan Neely was a homeless black man who would perform on New York City subways to earn money to eat and etc. Well, that is going to go to trial. President Biden has proposed a drastic cut in bank overdraft fees, and the cuts are truly drastic. And if they are to be approved, it take place late in 2025. Also, the Sentencing Project released the final installment in a 5-series report presenting the key driver of disparity in imprisonment, which they identified as laws and policies that exacerbate inequality and disproportionately overburden communities of color. No kidding, right? No kidding whatsoever. We also expected to be joined by the one and only. In fact, he is here, the one and only Mark Make It Plain Thompson. Mark, amid a chaotic political landscape, rising threats against the African Americans, challenges in preserving Black history, and the pervasive issue of misinformation and disinformation targeting people of color, we're going to talk to the one and only Mark Thompson this morning about that as well. But Mark, we're going to start down in Florida. The Board of Education has passed regulations limiting the use of public funds for diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, activities, and policies in the public college system. The board defines DEI as any program, campus activity, or policy that classifies individuals on the basis of race, color, sex, national origin, gender identity, or sexual orientation, and promotes differential or preferential treatment of individuals on the basis of such classification. Of course, we know, Mark, that DEI professionals are those who know DEI is defined in a different way. And it's really aimed at correcting inequities within an organization for marginalized groups. Mark, this all-out assault, we talk about assault on American democracy. There's been an all-out assault on people of color, marginalized people. Where's Florida eventually going? And is anybody going to stop them?
Well, first of all, good morning. Florida is gone. It's not going anywhere. It's already gone. It's been gone for years. And this is why this year is so important. Donald Trump and his Supreme Court appointments enabled the striking down of affirmative action, and therefore the striking down of DEI, which is very extreme, which really also doesn't have anything to do with affirmative action. But I mean, it's caused really a carpet bombing of any and everything that has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right.
DeSantis is, I think he thinks he's still running for president. He's not going to be the president. If Donald Trump dropped out of the race today, DeSantis still wouldn't be the president. But obviously, this is his effort to try to appeal to the worst and the lowest common denominator of the electorate in Florida and the electorate in America.
Yeah, and Mark, so we're seeing in real time constantly. We hear folks talk about this current administration and whether they criticize the president for being 80 years old, whether they criticize him for not doing enough, we do see so much where folks uh, are seemingly uh, turning a blind eye to, like you said, Florida's gone. Florida, you can't even accuse anyone of being a racist in Florida anymore. I mean, that's law. You can't read a book by a black person in Florida. It's law. I mean, Florida is gone, like you said, but we continue to see in other places, and we continue to see certainly from the top candidate on the Republican side and all of his minions. We continue to see this. It's no longer what we call it. This is no longer dog whistle. This is like straight up. This is the deal, and y'all just gotta swallow it.
Yeah, and again, DeSantis is what he's really trying to do is be Donald Trump, be more racist than he is, try to get attention, try to appeal to his base, the Trump base, in case he has a shot at the presidency. But I just don't think that's realistic either. And obviously, too, he wants to stay in office in Florida, and there is this element in Florida that is terribly racist, terribly Trump country, and that's pretty much his agenda. But we saw what happened in Iowa. I mean, it didn't work there.
Right.
I don't know at what point people realize that the majority of the country is not really interested in going back to the 1800s. I don't know what it'll take for these people to realize that, but they should probably hurry up and do it.
Well, but it seems that's just the point, though, right? There's a faction who believes that they can take this country back there.
Yeah, it's what, a fourth of the country. I mean, what is it? I think a fourth of the country identifies, not even a third, a fourth identifies as Republican.
Mm-hmm.
That's 1/4. 3/4 of the people don't. And so if only 1/4 is thinking that way and believes that, then what do we have? We have a minority of people who, well, we don't have to go back as far as 1800.
Mm-hmm.
Apartheid was later than that. You know, in the early 1900s, maybe as late as 1940. That's where they're headed. That's what they want to happen, and that's just not.
They're not voting, Mark, for DeSantis. Obviously, DeSantis can't carry Trump's water when it comes to the vote. You're right. You're 100% right. He's not the only one that's trying to be more racist than Trump, to show that, or as they say, more to the right of Trump. But you still, I keep going back, and maybe this won't be the case this year, but I keep going back to 2020, and while we know, Trump lost to Biden, he still got 75 million votes. Why? I mean, how do you in other countries? I saw an article, for instance, Mark. Someone wrote an op-ed, I believe it was Politico or somewhere, one of those outlets, and they really broke it down, I thought, very well, about the fact that they can still support someone like this, but yet on the other side of their mouth, they also speak about American democracy. But 75 million people still cast their vote for this guy, knowing who he is, knowing who he has always been. Why would there be any different this time?
Well, I think we'd like to believe that people know more about him now and have been exposed to some of his foolishness, not the least of which is January 6th. So I guess the thinking is that there are those who voted for him before who wouldn't again. That's not an impossibility. We saw what happened in Georgia. And when the Georgia election official, was it Raffensperger, testified, I may have the name wrong, testified before Congress, Stacey, and Trump is on the phone saying find me 16,000 more votes. Give me 16,000 votes.
Mhm.
And he said, well, man, that won't help you because there were 39,000 Republicans who didn't vote for you in Georgia.
Mhm.
That's before January 6th.
Right. Right.
January 6th hadn't happened yet. They weren't aware that he was an insurrectionist. Had not seen that. What in Georgia now? This ain't any place. This ain't up north somewhere. This ain't out west, Midwest. This is Georgia. What was going on in Georgia that many Republicans did not vote for him? That's not necessarily to say that they voted for Biden, but they didn't vote for him. They left him off.
Mhm.
So you have to kind of at least hypothesize that if that could happen in Georgia, and now we've had January 6th, multiple indictments.
Yeah.
It's just that he went berserk
In the court.
with E. Jean Carroll, and that was over.
Right.
He lost the case. Then he starts talking about the woman again and running her down. And the judge said, okay, boom, here's some more charges for you.
Yep. More sanctions.
Just insane.
Yeah.
And
So, Mark,
I think I may have said this on your show before.
Mhm.
The importance of the New York case and the money case.
Mhm.
He made his bones here in New York. People are fascinated with him because he's Trump. And there's Trump buildings, and he's allegedly a millionaire or a billion, whatever he's supposed to be. We know. I mean, once people realize that's not really true, and that luster comes off, you don't become a TV star, a reality TV show star. You don't become somebody with your name on a bunch of buildings because you from Mar-a-Lago. You in Mar-a-Lago, nobody knows who you are. Matter of fact, you're not even in Mar-a-Lago anymore.
right.
So people, the cult is always fascinated with its leaders' wealth, largesse, and success. Once the cultist loses that, the leader loses that, you know, that people are like, well, maybe I can move on to something else. Maybe this isn't as big of a deal as I thought it was.
Mhm.
And maybe I'm also seeing some of my friends who've been locked up following him. Nobody went down to January 6th on their own. Nobody else wanted that but him. Nobody else encouraged that but him. So you would like to think that people would wake up from that. I don't know. It remains to be seen.
Well,
But
you know, you made a great point. You talked about the number of Republican voters as compared to Democrats. You talked about that, but also we hear a lot. There is no real Democratic race for president. We know that Biden is going to be the nominee. That's a given. So we are focused a lot on what the GOP has been doing because of the debates that few people are paid attention to. We look at the ratings are horrible and all of the debates. In fact, they canceled the one that was coming up this week. Nikki Haley dropped out of it. DeSantis has dropped out of it. Are we just, and you travel a lot, and you and not just travel a lot, you're around, you converse with so many in the know folks, but are we overthinking or overblowing how Trump is winning on the Republican side? Are we just giving them too much credit to say that, man, he's building enough momentum to beat Biden? Are we giving them too much credit? Is it that, what I'm asking too is that, is it enough of them to overcome what the Democrat voters?
that there's enough of us who won't vote. That's the trick. It's not about what they do, it's about what we do. We have enough on this side to beat that. The question is whether people are going to actually get out and vote, whether or not the enthusiasm is there. You know, people talk about the enthusiasm gap. The key demographics, as we've said before, are the African-American elected and suburban. Second demographic that's important, suburban, college-educated white women. He's lost them forever. The Republicans seemingly have lost them after the reversal of Roe. In every election since Roe, those women have made the difference, and Democrats have won those elections. So I don't think anybody's going to. I don't think we're going to lose them. You know, whether or not African Americans, and we're hearing out. We don't know how true it is, but Black men are attracted to Trump, some of them being picked off, Ice Cube and his foolishness. Those are the things that are going to hurt us, that are going to be problematic. But if we do our job, and if everybody stays at home, just like on the football field, we stay home, hold that line, we can win. I see Greer's asking about Stefanik.
Right.
No, Stefanik is not Roe. This is about Roe. Liz Cheney couldn't win these women back. You have taken away women's bodily autonomy, period. And I don't think women are ever going to forget that. They are mobilized by that, because we knew it would happen. A lot of them didn't realize it was going to happen. Now that it's happened, they're mobilized.
Well, it's obviously it's gonna be interesting. It was just curious how you framed it, because we tend to look at it like, well, this guy is, how can they support him? How can so many people support him? Well, we really don't know that.
Well, those who support him are white supremacists. That's how we know. Those who support Donald Trump hate us. They are white supremacists. They hate immigrants. They hate all people of color. They hate women. If you support Donald Trump, you are only about the well-being of white men. Period. Not about anything else. There's nothing that he offers women. White women, no women. There's nothing that he offers people of color. So if you're supporting him, we know exactly what you are, and we can't beat around the bush about that.
Well, Mark, in Kentucky, state representative who, speaking of reality TV, he was a reality TV star. He was on Survivor. Now he's a rep in Kentucky. He is now trying to do the moonwalk a little bit, backtrack after a bill he filed would have removed first cousins from the list of familial relationships outlawed by Kentucky's incest laws. State Rep Nick Wilson said he plans to refile his legislation with the list fully intact. It's just, again, he says that, oh, it was a mistake, but he's going to refile. What does this, let's just briefly, because it's so disgusting, but just briefly, what does this also signal, or should signal, to people about the GOP as a whole?
Yeah, that wasn't no mistake. That was you don't file something like that unless you know that's something that you have some experience in, or there's something that you want to appeal to. You don't file something like that. But that's the illness, and that's really an embarrassment for someplace like Kentucky, obviously, because in Kentucky, that's kind of the joke about Kentucky and white folks in Kentucky and incest and all of that. So yeah,
and he played right into it, didn't he?
He played right into it. He absolutely played right into it.
It's again, is that also, or am I overreaching? Is that also, Mark, just an indication, another indication of where Republicans are?
Yeah, I mean, well, where the culture is who supports that kind of thing is backwards. You want to go back and try to talk about marrying some cousin? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is also a party who, and I don't remember, Mark, if it was in Kentucky. I don't know if you remember this from last year, early last year. One of the representatives, I believe it was a state senator, who was pushing a bill to legalize marriage when the woman, it didn't say anything about the boy or the male, but when the woman turns 12. And it just, no one seemed to get too upset by it. Although they did stop that bill and I believe it was Kentucky. I could be wrong, but no one seemed to be upset. We are no longer as a I don't say we, but when I say we, I mean this country as a whole doesn't seem to be too upset when it comes to children anymore being harmed.
You remember when Doug Jones ran against Roy Moore in Alabama,
Hmm.
and black women stopped Roy Moore in terms of voting. They voted against him as white lost. A lot of white women voted for Roy Moore. There's still people alive, unfortunately. There's still a generation of folk alive, of women who were forced to marry at a very young age, and who were forced to marry maybe even their cousins. I don't know. So until you cycle that out, you're gonna have that. And the people who are doing that kind of stuff obviously have relationships with others who are still impacted by that kind of life. I mean, look at that dude. He looks crazy.
Yeah, that was Missouri, and of course, Greer being Greer, with all the greatness comes up with it. I mean, he just flat out defended 12-year-olds getting married. A 12-year-old can't even change; it can barely tie his or her shoe,
But they
let
wouldn't want
alone
12-year-olds to vote. They wouldn't want younger people to vote, though. They wouldn't want that. You can get married. You can get married and get knocked up, but you can't vote.
right.
You can't, but that's what. But it all goes together now. If you want to take away, see, I was talking. I had a guest on my show yesterday. People talk about abortion. I never say it that way. I talk about women's bodily autonomy. That's the whole thing,
Hmm.
not just abortion. All these states with those young, that's about women's bodily autonomy.
Well, Mark, there in the great city of New York, a judge yesterday declined to dismiss the case against former Marine Daniel Penny, who placed a black subway rider, Jordan Neely, into a fatal chokehold last year. Penny, who's 25 years old, I should say, pled not guilty after a grand jury indicted him on charges of second-degree manslaughter and criminal negligent homicide in the May 1st death of Neely, who was 30 years old, a known subway rider who performed dance routines in costume as Michael Jackson. He just was apparently, by all accounts, was having an episode, but was no immediate threat. Apparently, no immediate threat to anyone. But Daniel Penny decides to take matters into his own hand and take this young man's life. It reminds me, Mark, and I know you know it well, and many of our viewers will remember. It just brought to mind, anyway, not necessarily reminds, but brought to mind Bernard Getz and the so-called vigilante, subway vigilante. In that case, those four young men or three young men that Bernard Getz shot, people at that time, at least, were ignoring the fact that those guys were running away and he shot them in the back.
Right.
There was no threat to him. Daniel Penny, Jordan Neely did not pose a threat, by all accounts, to Daniel Penny.
Yeah. This is an important case. You just showed on the screen the picture of Daniel Penny getting out of the SUV, and he's riding around town in SUVs with attorneys and being treated like he's some kind of a MVP. That is despicable. Why is he even being celebrated? He ought, even being celebrated. We know now to say that maybe it's good he's in an SUV and not riding the subway anymore, so he doesn't choke somebody else.
Yeah.
But I mean, Black Lives Matter. No, to people like Daniel Penny, they still don't. And so I know the judge. I mean, he was trying to get out, but he can't. There was no justification for this. other than, again, Daniel Penny being white, and people think that's justification enough to kill somebody, but it's not. You took the life of another human being, an innocent human being. Who do you think you are? You are not the police. You're not law enforcement. You're not a mental health professional. Mind your business, people. Mind your business.
Wade Whitfield is asking Mark, what about the other men who also restrained him? Are they being charged as accessories? The short answer is no. I haven't heard of any charges being launched against anyone else on that subway.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that either, honestly.
Yeah.
No.
And turning our attention to back actually to the Biden administration, President Biden yesterday proposed a new rule, Mark, that could limit bank overdraft fees to as little as $3. The regulation, which was unveiled by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in tandem with the White House, could cut billions of dollars off of what banks earn from overdraft fees. Some banks charge as much as $39 if you are overdrafting your account. And so the president wants it to be no more than $3. How important is this legislation? People tend to not pay attention to these type things, Mark. But how important would you say this proposal is?
Well, first of all, the real, you asked the wrong question, Stacey. If it was that easy, if a president could literally just do that, what has taken so long for that to happen? That's a real question. That's a question everybody be asking. Everybody whether worry about, well, I don't know, and folks not being mobilized. Wait a minute, this always been $30 some odd dollars.
Yep.
You mean you could literally just change that with the stroke of a pen? Nobody knew. That's what nobody knew. But you're right. These little things that Biden is doing are very, very important. They're significant. Even something like this, nobody knew or you could even do. He's doing things that you never knew a president could do. But it is not moving, unfortunately, the enthusiasm gap. And I don't know, I don't quite know why that is. People just aren't motivated yet. I think it's too early.
Is that what it is, Mark? Is it too early?
I think it's early. I think people are, and I have a colleague in another organization, a nonprofit, and they've been having some fundraising challenges. And when she talked to some of the advisors, there's this new thing going around. I have to look more into it, but it's called engagement fatigue. And people aren't as engaged at this moment in time right now. That was the explanation that this expert gave. So I think that's where we are. I think that's what we're dealing with right now. Biden's other challenge, as we saw in South Carolina, is the war.
Yeah.
And people are really disengaged with him because of that. He's got to figure out a way to get that from around him. And obviously it's too late to do that unless he stops the war, period.
Right.
He's got to stop. You notice in South Carolina, when the protesters spoke up, he didn't really ignore them. He said, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember exact words, but he said, I don't know if Greg can pull that clip real quick, but he said, I'm trying to do the best I can. And I think they get it, that they're not helping. And then there was a story, might be easy to find this, Greer, where Biden told no good Netanyahu, I'm your ally, but you might cost me my election. And Netanyahu said, I don't give a damn.
Right.
So I think that's the greater challenge for Joe Biden, trying to get disconnected from that, trying to shut that down. I think that's important. I mean, I think part of his administration started out old school, thinking that the Jewish electorate would make that much of a difference and would be with this bombing. But I think we now even have a majority of Jewish Americans, 70% whom vote the same way as Black people do. 70% of the Jewish community in this country, 90% of the Black electorate in this country vote the same way. So that says something. So yeah, I think that's what we're up against.
Yeah, and he inherited a system which it seems that every U.S. president inherits it, which is this: you got to, regardless of the situation, at all costs, you have to stand with Israel. And what, for good or for better or for worse, you have to stand with them. They're our Middle Eastern, not just allies, but Israel is more American presidents, American regimes, if you will, seem to view Israel more of family than any other ally.
Well, but that really became more prominent in the H.W. Bush administration because he got the resolution overturned. See, in the United Nations, it was on the books that Zionism was racism. And he got that overturned for whatever reason. But I think we also know that Israel, to many White Houses, has been a problem. And you know, sooner or later you're in a White House and you grow weary because Israel pushes it. It pushes it too far. You're our friend, you're our ally, but hold up, you know, and it causes a problem. That's also been the case as well. Now, is any White House going to speak out in an outspoken way against Israel policy? No, they're afraid to. Well, they were, considering the electorate, but things have changed, and there's a new generation here, and I don't think, and that's why I'm saying that this new generation changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
You're not likely to find, again, let's keep it with that important demographic: suburban, college-educated white women. You're not likely to find that demographic fighting to restore Roe, standing for women's bodily autonomy, and yet at the same time blindly supporting what Israel is doing right now. Even if you started out October 7th, but now wait a minute, where are we now? They tried to talk about the decapitated babies or the dead babies. That turned out not to be true.
Right,
And, and so what did they do next? For one day, it took over the headlines, the rape of women. But that didn't, true or not true, that didn't hold. That didn't captivate the public.
Exactly.
The demand for this to end, the demand for a ceasefire,
Right.
is still where the majority is.
Yeah, Power 96 says, thank you, Mark. I have learned something today. George H.W. Bush overturned Zionism as racist in the UN. I did not know that, he says.
Well, let me be clear. He didn't do that single-handedly. He pushed the United Nations to change that piece. But, you know, when you have decades, that's on the books. Zionism is racism. That's how the world saw that. That wasn't for 5 minutes. I have to go back and look and see when that, Griff, you can look that up. The year that resolution was adopted that Zionism was racism. I don't know how long that was on the books, but it was on the books.
Mm-hmm.
And Bush, it was kind of, I don't remember what caused him to do that. It was a little bit random. It was never random. I mean, it was probably something he was doing that he didn't want us to know he was doing. Or there was a motivation for it. But Zionism was racism.
Well, David Youngblood says Israel has lost the support of the world. They were in a morally superior position on October 7th and now have lost that moral high road. And it seems, Mark, as we talk about that, you know, more and more information has come out, which has really fueled these protests that Israel, how did they not know that they had a year, based on reports, they had a year advance notice that this was going to happen, how it was going to happen, and pretty much when it was going to happen.
And they knew that because Hamas is an organization that they funded. The Zionism, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 3379 was passed in 1975. Zionism is racism. I just looked it up. So yeah, they were aware of that. And we also have to see things as being bigger than that moment. This is not just about October 7th.
Mm-hmm.
This is about further subjugation of the Palestinian people. It's about the clearing out of Gaza. There's a rumor. Well, first, this is not a rumor. The relationship that exists between Putin and Netanyahu That's there. Folks, if you go on, when we finish this broadcast, Google Putin Netanyahu and then click images. You will never see more pictures of any two individuals together on the internet than those two. Why, with at least a third of Ukraine being Jewish and the president of Ukraine being Jewish, why is Israel not involved in defending Ukraine? Because Russian missile defense systems are throughout the Middle East. And Putin says to Netanyahu, if you want to bomb anybody around here, I won't shoot your missiles down if you stay out of Ukraine. The other rumor is, if you stay out of Ukraine, if I keep winning the war in the Ukraine, then I'll resettle all the Ukrainian Jews in Gaza once you clear it out. That's unconfirmed, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And then Trump, Putin, and Netanyahu are a threesome. This is a menage a trois. So when this happened, I called it. This is 1980. This is Jimmy Carter. This is not just about what happened on October 7th. This is about restoring Trump to power. So in this case, Trump is Reagan. Wow. Reagan had the Ayatollah and them keep the hostages to prevent, people get it twisted. That wasn't an October surprise. They were trying to prevent the October surprise of a hostage release or rescue. So HW again, we're back to HW, former head of the CIA, flew to Paris with the future head of the CIA, William Casey, to meet with the Ayatollah in Paris on Osama bin Laden's father's plane. We lost a couple of years ago the Newsweek journalist that uncovered a lot of that, Robert Perry, P-A-R-R-Y, great man. And he was the one to document the role the Reagan administration played in keeping the hostages in Iran so that Reagan would win the election.
Yeah, and you know, if you recall, I know you recall, but if folks recall, Carter sent a military team in there on a rescue mission of the hostages, and somehow that leaked to Iran, and they were able to shoot down those American planes. They say the planes crashed out in the desert outside of Tehran, but the rescue mission, of course, was unsuccessful. So I wonder, Mark, how much that was leaked to Iran as part of all what that picture you just painted, that real picture you just painted. It seems to me that Carter had folks inside his White House that betrayed him as well.
Oh yeah, it was
because of this.
It was a lot of that going on. The analogy is not direct, but it's very similar. You have a Democratic president, you have a crisis in the Middle East, you have hostages. So yeah, it's something to be concerned about, and this White House needs to find a way out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mark, I want to switch gears now to with all of this chaotic political realities of today, the chaotic world. How about the Black press? How do you view the Black press navigating this chaos?
Well, I mean, I think you're an example. What we have to do as the Black press is continue to bring relevant information to our audiences. Let our audiences know, our readers, our subscribers know, our viewers, inform them on what's important, what matters to them. Again, I'm going to have on my show in the next day or so, Monifa Bandelli of Moms Rising. And she talks about the black maternal mortality rate. So when we say women's bodily autonomy, that's not just about the right to have an abortion. Okay, this is about women's rights to have agency and protection over their own bodies and to be able to protect their bodies themselves. So that's information we need to inform people about. We got to reach the black men who are, for whatever reason, and I hope it's fewer black men than they report. But we can find that out ourselves. We got to do our own report. We got to talk to our own community and ask about black men who want to go in the direction of Ice Cube. What is that about? What is it about Donald Trump's swagger that attracts you? Because if you attracted that, you would have been attracted to the master on the plantation. Period. That's what that is. You would have been in love with the master on the plantation. And we know that black men had no bodily autonomy themselves on the plantation. They were sexual abuse wasn't just black women being impregnated. So you a black man running to the massa. But do you want to be abused and violated? Seems like it. Seems like that's what's going on. Now there's another rumor that Trump's gonna pick Uncle Tom Ben Carson as his running mate. And I kind of hope he does. Because I think that would mobilize more people in our base. I think that would mobilize many in the black community, strangely enough, to wake up and say, wait a minute, Ben Carson, because everybody knows what Ben Carson is.
Right. So you do believe that would kind of light a fire under the black voter base?
How could it not? How could it not?
Do you think Trump would indeed pick? I mean, he keeps talking about a woman. Do you think he would indeed pick a black man?
But well, that's not a black. Ben Carson's not a really.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, we say it all the time in the show. He's somebody in blackface, but
on the man's right. He's the man on the box. But I heard from a fairly reliable source that's a possibility.
Wow, interesting. There's
and they talk about Stefanik. Nobody knows who Elaine Stefanik is. She had her one moment in the sun. I don't see her mobilizing the whole nation. It's still about him.
Right.
I don't see him picking Nikki Haley. I don't see, even as whack as she is, I don't see her accepting it. I mean, that'd be pretty, that just looks crazy too. I mean, you're out here now, for the first time, she's actually acknowledging the man, has got some legal troubles. She's kind of going against him. She's desperate. But maybe Nikki helps us too, because you put somebody on the ticket who says the Civil War was not about slavery and that America's never been a racist country.
Yet she says she experienced racism when she was growing up. But go ahead.
And her parents, Michael Harriot of the Griot, our good brother, and he's always good at the history, talks about how she would not be where she is if not for black people. Her parents worked at an HBCU. They taught there. That's how they made it and established their middle class after immigrating here or whatever they did. So, Nikki, you need to bow down every time you talk about black people. Because if not for that HBCU, I don't remember, was it Voorhees? I don't remember which one it was, but you would not be where you are.
Wow, breaking it down as who wrote one of our, I think it was Power 96. Yeah, he says, no, you will never get this information on ABC, CBS, NBC, or Fox. He says, I am researching all of this after the show. I am motivated. So Mark, of course, Voorhees, you're right. It was Voorhees. Austin, of course, chimes in, says it was Voorhees. Threats against the very existence of Black America, of course, we've been talking about it, is ever president, what type of strategies, Mark? Let's talk strategy for the Black press and when it comes to Black America, Black journalists. You mentioned Michael Harriot, indeed, one of the best out there. What's the role that we must play, and your view of a strategy?
Well, I think we have to work together. There has to be unity. We can't just be all over the place. You're part of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. I am. My first job in journalism, professional job, was with the Washington Afro-American in Washington, D.C. way back in the 80s when I was just a pup, literally a cub reporter, as they used to say. But one of the things, folks, that as we see the decline of print media, really the decline of media.
Yeah.
You just had somebody with the Sinclair Group, was it, that bought
the Baltimore Sun.
Baltimore Sun. That's problematic.
Extremely.
And they standing there with Armstrong Williams and you know,
somebody else in the blackface.
Over the years, you see people out socially. You try to be polite. I've been polite and gracious to Armstrong. In fact, he thanked me when I spoke out. Remember when he was with the Bush administration,
mm-hmm.
and they cut him off. And I said, this is what happens. This is the lesson. He was expecting to be attacked. I didn't attack him. I said, but this is the lesson of when you get in bed with those people. They will jettison you. And that's what they did to him. So the demise of real news is happening in two ways. You got right-wing organizations and right-wing people taking over news departments, taking over local TV news, packaging not any more local stories, but national stories that play to the right wing.
Right.
Then you also have people moving away from print and going digital. And so one of the things that I've been asked to do, it's ambitious, we'll see, but we've got to help the Black press become more available to a newer generation and a large generation through this digitization. And so that's what I hope to be able to help the NNPA do. Those who are holding on to print, I mean, that's okay for as long as it can last. But it is, it is a dying piece. It's like everything else we've had. We've lost the power, really, of in many ways, of Black Talk Radio to syndication.
Right. Right.
And I'm not saying to put anybody down in particular, but I mean, that's just the reality. And I was there when that happened. I saw that happen. I was on WL in Washington, D.C. People also got away from AM radio. That's where Black Talk Radio lived. So you have to adjust to the times. And I think that that's what the NNPA has to do. And I think the NNPA, for those who don't know the NNPA, that's how many, most people don't even know there's 200 Black newspapers.
Yeah. Yeah. But Mark, how difficult though would it be to preserve the Black press, Black history, as well, is all intertwined, if MAGA returns to power?
So I don't know that it would be that difficult. So some of the media who don't even necessarily support MAGA, I'm talking about the corporate media,
Mm-hmm.
they want MAGA back because that's when they made their most money.
Mm-hmm. But you got Trump running around talking about taking licenses from CBS and ABC.
Yeah, but that's what they want. We'll always be relevant because there'll always be a reason for us to stand up and fight and defend our people. So I don't think he's a direct threat. I think we have to realize who we are, and we have to remain a threat to him and to white supremacy. I think that's our calling.
Well, and that's probably the white supremacy part is probably the biggest threat. I mean, do you see it as the biggest threat?
White supremacy is the biggest threat in the world. I mean, it's the biggest threat to everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the reality of it.
And you mentioned too something that it's not a unique thought, but it's something that continues to come up but never seems to happen, and that is this whole unity piece. How do we get there, Mark? I mean, what needs to take place? I have on this program the last couple of days when looking at the big picture and what's at stake. My feeling on it is that there's always differences in families, there's always differences in groups, but my feeling is that you need the Black press, the Byron Allens as well, the Sharptons, the NAACP, the Ben Crumps, and all to get together at a table and bring all of the concerns together and take it from there. Attack the threats from there, because without unity, it's just never going to be fully defeated.
Well, I thought we were talking specifically about the NNPA and the Black press. And when I say unity, I mean that's what I'm talking about. Obviously, yes, it would be ideal to have unity across the board in every place we can have it. But in some cases, the challenge to unity is affected by who really is pulling the strings. And often where you find different groups of different people resistant to unity, resistant to coming to the table, then somebody else is pulling the strings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it goes along with what Power 96 is saying here. He says, remember, Sister Harriet couldn't convince everyone to run off the plantation. So I guess he's saying, he's speaking your language there too, Mark. It's all about doing what's best, right? I mean, that's what it should be about, right? Doing what's best.
Yeah, it certainly is. And the best thing to do is for us to come together as a people and have unity.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, Mark, before we sign off this morning, I know that you have something else that you've been working on, or at least touting anyway. Talk a little bit before we play it about what we're about to see, this music video.
Well, a group of us came together and wrote a song calling for a ceasefire. And myself, Nabil Lentz, Philip Jobert, the two of them from the spiritual music group Common Hymnal. You all check them out at Common Hymnal, really great group of people. This is our second collaboration. We wrote HR 40 a couple of years ago. I think it's been 2 years, yeah. Wrote the HR 40 song together. And we were at a retreat. And what was on everyone's mind was what was going on in Israel and Gaza. And so we said, why don't we write a song about ceasefire? And we did. And it ended up expanding into a lot of very, very significant people, everyday people, as well as some civil rights and religious icons. Right there is Dr. Mitri Rahev, there's Dr. Alva Carruthers, Reverend Jesse Jackson, Reverend James Lawson, Reverend James Forbes, Bishop Vashti McKenzie. Right there's Ariel Gold with Fellowship of Reconciliation. There's Alan Bozak you just saw, Linda Sarsour. Alan Bozak was one of Nelson Mandela's and Bishop Tutu's right-hand men. That's Ayanna Gregory, who is Dick and Lillian Gregory's youngest daughter. She sings the lead on the song. So it
Right.
it, it expanded us doing a whole full-fledged music video that I confess consumed me because it was a lot of work to do that. We didn't have a whole team of people, but I'm thankful to the team we had. And Rodney Minor, Henry Joseph, Jack Sullivan, Bishop Dwayne, Reverend Jack Sullivan, Bishop Dwayne Royster, who also were co-writers. There were 5 of us all together. I think I'm right, about 5 or 6 of us. Ayanna stepped in with some verses. And so we all contributed to the writing. Malkia Lydia, Free Benjamin helped with the editing. And then we have this cast. People should go to ceasefiresong.com and see the symphony of voices and effort that went into this. Took a little longer than expected because it got that big. We've not seen, this is the first music video that Reverend James Lawson has ever been in, that James Forbes has ever been in, Reverend James Forbes and people like that. And it's even the music video debut of Ayanna Gregory's own mother, Lillian Gregory. She takes part in it. And all of these voices coming together to call for a ceasefire in Dr. King's holy name, because that's what he would have done. So we invite people to check it out. It's on my social media at Minister with 2 T's, Make It Plain, YouTube, Minister, Make It Plain, either one, Minister with 2 T's and Make It Plain. You'll find it. And you can go to ceasefiresong.com and see it there. And you can download it there on the website and share it. You know, it's I guess the best way to draw an analogy is, you know, it's got, you know, sort of a We Are the World kind of a vibe.
Yeah, so I was going to say, it sounds like it. Yeah.
And so people should check it out. And also, the song is available wherever you get your music, Apple, Spotify, all the music platforms. It's there as well. And, you know, now that I say that, Stacey, acknowledging We Are the World and Stevie Wonder's role in that. So watch this. So I co-wrote HR 40. Stevie Wonder and I are the only 2 individuals to have written music specifically about a piece of legislation and specifically about a piece of John Conyers legislation. Stevie Wonder wrote Happy Birthday for the King holiday bill. I co-wrote HR 40 for the HR 40 bill. Stevie Wonder was a big part of We Are the World. And now ceasefire kind of seems like a We Are the World kind of piece. So when you look at that, that means that there are tremendous commonalities and similarities between me and Stevie Wonder. So essentially people should now start speaking about Stevie Wonder and me in the same sentence. That's what I tell everybody. So when you say Stevie Wonder, you say Mark Thompson, same thing, you know, musical genius. No, but if people go check out ceasefiresong.com and
ceasefiresong.com.
and you can download it there, share it, go to your wherever you get your music platforms, and download the song as well. Listen to it. It's a great song, and a lot of people have enjoyed it. The ending is very powerful. We did a very complex counter melody, and you know, we shout out our brother Face, one of our mixing engineers, Derek Winkley, one of the producers, Malcolm Duplessis of Common Hymnal. So it's really been a meaningful journey. It was a difficult. Let me tell y'all something. Doing a music video ain't easy. In fact, I was saying to one of our cast members yesterday, Asmira Hamuri Davis, and Asmira is one of the leaders in Black Christians for Palestine, and she's in the video. I said, Asmira, you know, I've always been involved in the movement in the streets. I'll protest, I'll go to jail, you know, civil disobedience, all that. And I said, it is easier for me just to go out here in the streets and demonstrate and go to jail than it is to do a music video. That is, it's a lot easier. Even at this stage in my life, Wendell Griffin there, you saw this Bishop Vashti, you saw Tamika Mallory, James Forbes, Alva Carell, you saw Tamika Mallory. There's Reverend Jeremiah Wright. There's Reverend James Lawson right there. So,
Austin Cooper says we got to rename you Mark Wonder Thompson. That is, listen,
he gets it. I said that to Asmira, and she said the same thing. She put Wonder in my name. So, or said we're equal. You might need to call Stevie Mark Wonder.
But there you go.
Well, just give me his name.
All part of
Mark. Give him my name too.
See, it's all part of Mark Thompson's song "In the Key of Life."
That's right. So no, it's but again, it's not just me. This was a great, again, the Billings, Philip Joubert, Reverend Jack Sullivan, Bishop Dwayne Royster, Ayanna Gregory. We all collaborated on the writing of the song. Yeah. And as you saw, people are very pleased to see Reverend Wright, Linda Sarsour, as well as in one of our leading Palestinian activists here in this country. As I said, you saw Tamika Mallory, Pastor Michael McBride, who organized the black clergy to put a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for a ceasefire first. And at the very end, the very special person has a cameo in the video, and that's Joy Reid herself. Folks, check it out.
Check it out, y'all. Ceasefiresong.com.
And download it, folks. Share it.
Download it and share it. Yep,
absolutely. You know, because let me tell you, there's so many ways, folks, for us to express what's going on here, and to deal with what this issue really is. And this is just one other creative way to do it. You know, all of us can't get in the streets. All of us can't leave work and do that. But put the video out there, support it, and let people see that on your timeline, so you'll be on the record that you too are calling for a ceasefire. Well, we asked in the video, what would Dr. King do? We asked God, is this WWJD? What would Jesus do? WWMLKD. What would MLK do? And he stood for nonviolence. He stood against all war of any kind. And we're approaching the number 30,000 dead. Let me just say one other thing. This is not just about October 7th. You think about this, y'all. If you're bombing and killing a population of people, the majority of which are youth and teenagers, what are you really doing? You know what you're doing? You are trying to radicalize them so you can create another Hamas to keep this cycle going. You see, because war is an industry, y'all. Some folk live off of war, live off of conflict. You gotta have a permanent war and a permanent boogeyman. All right, so think about that as we're watching this unfold. Because what's gonna happen to the survivors of this? What are they gonna do? We all believe in nonviolence, but if you infiltrate that population with another group of people, the same people that have helped through the infiltration of the Palestinian people through Hamas, you got the same thing all over again. And it just keeps, it's an ever spinning wheel. So that's what we got to fight against. Ceasefire, y'all. Ceasefiresong.com.
Well, tomorrow we'll be talking about when Charlie Kirk went after MLK's legacy and the legacy of the Civil Rights Act on his podcast this week. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Mark, Make It Plain Thompson. Check out him on a regular basis, but certainly ceasefiresong.com. Check that out as well. Mark, we appreciate you getting up this morning and joining the Black Press's Let It Be Known. Thanks a lot. And thank you all for watching.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.